And welcome to Angie's Tasty Tuesday. I'm Angie, and I'm here almost every Tuesday to bring you a new and delicious whole food plant-based recipe that you can incorporate into your family's weekly menu. Today we're going to be making some mushroom stroganoff shells. They're delicious and hearty and perfect for this time of year when you want that really warm, feel-good dinner. So let's get started. I've already pre-cooked my 10 to 12 ounce box of, these are chickpea pasta shells. And I really like the chickpeas for this particular recipe because they have lots of little holes in them that really absorb and hold the sauce nicely when you serve it. You could use a rotini or any other kind of pasta, but my husband really liked the way this held the sauce. So I have my chickpea shells already pre-cooked according to the package directions and drained. And we're going to start off with 12 ounces of portobello mushrooms and 2 tablespoons of tamari light. And we're going to saute these in this pot, it's non-stick, just until the mushrooms have lost their liquid. And that usually takes between 5 and 7 minutes. So I've got 16 ounces of portobello mushrooms. I have a whole pound and 2 tablespoons of tamari light. Now I use the light because it has less sodium and I try to be very conscious of the sodium content. And this recipe also has miso in it, which is also going to give it a salty flavor. So I don't want to overpower the salt or give it too much of a sodium content. So we're going to saute these mushrooms. It'll take between 5 and 7 minutes until they lose all of their liquid. So after the mushrooms have sauteed down and they've lost all your juice, you're going to pour them in a separate dish and put them to the side because we're going to use the same pot now to saute our onion. And you know, if you've been watching me for very long, you know that I normally use red onion for everything. But for this particular dish, you're either going to want a white or a yellow onion. I'm using white just because it's a little bit stronger than the yellow. If you don't like quite the oniony flavor, then you can use a milder, sweeter onion, but I really like the robustness of the white onion. We're going to saute that until the onion is translucent, and we'll be right back. Now that our onions are translucent and tender, we're going to add our tablespoon of minced garlic. When would I ever use a teaspoon of garlic? And saute it for an additional about 30 seconds. This next part is a little tricky, but not really. You want to take 2 tablespoons, and I've used whole wheat white flour, and we're going to gently sprinkle that over as we keep stirring the onion and the garlic mix. We're kind of making a roux, but without the butter. So you're going to sprinkle it in and just kind of stir it around as you sprinkle it, and it's going to look like a hot, lumpy mess, but that's okay. We're going to end up putting all of this in the food processor anyway, but you're going to gently saute that flour mixture for a couple more minutes just to kind of brown your flour. And then we're going to add our spices. I have 1 tablespoon of dried minced onion, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of ground thyme and ground rosemary, a half a teaspoon of ground rosemary, and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. Now I have to put the rosemary and the thyme in my spice grinder. And then we're just going to go ahead and saute that for just a couple seconds and get it down. Now we're going to add all of our liquids. We have a 1/2 cup of white cooking wine. And we're going to use that to kind of deglaze the pot and let it start to thicken up our roux just a little bit. Give you a little bit of a better look. It just starts to get a little thicker. Then we're going to add to that a 1/2 cup of water, a 1/2 cup of vegetable stock, unsalted, 1 cup of cashew milk, unsweetened. I make mine at home. And a 1/3 cup of raw cashews. And 1 tablespoon actually a 1/2 tablespoon of miso paste. You can use up to 1, but for me the 1/2 gives it plenty of salt and flavor. And we're going to saute this for about 10 minutes until it's all nicely incorporated. Now that we've simmered this for about 10 minutes, we're going to turn it off. going to pour this into a high-speed blender and process it until it's completely smooth. And we'll be now that we've processed our sauce down to a smooth consistency, I'm going to add it back to that pot. So really you only have your blender in the one pot to clean, which is really nice. Sometimes I feel like I use every toy and every appliance in my kitchen for a recipe, and I don't mind if it turns out really good. You've got to be willing to go a little bit of an extra mile to replace those flavors that so many people are used to. We're going to go ahead and add back in the mushrooms and the juice that we had set aside earlier. We're going to turn back on our burner and we're going to just gently simmer this again for just a couple of minutes to get those mushrooms heated back up and incorporated into our sauce. And the mushrooms are really what are going to give it that umami meat flavor. So we do want to let it simmer for maybe 1 to 2 minutes. Now that this is simmered for just about 2 minutes, I'm going to fold in my pre-cooked shells and give it a stir. You want to let the shells sit for just a few minutes before you serve it so that they get warmed back up. And we're going to top it with some vegan Parmesan cheese. And I will put that recipe in the comments for you today. It's a very quick recipe. It only has like 5 ingredients. And you can store it in the refrigerator. I save one of my little shaker tops. And it pairs perfectly with this mushroom stroganoff. We'll get it plated and be right back. Here we have our mushroom stroganoff shells plated with a little sprig of rosemary and our vegan Parmesan cheese. I hope your family enjoys this recipe as much as mine does. My husband gave it 4.5 stars out of 5, which is a pretty high rating for him. Serve it with some nice toasted garlic bread if you'd like, a hard Ezekiel bread with a little bit of garlic, roasted garlic smeared on it, or with a small side salad, or just by itself. Hope your family had a blessed Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next time. And until then, remember, plants are the best medicine.